Here. Heat wave's coming, I'm excited.
Used to be the, yay, it's hot, but now it's like, hopefully it doesn't get too hot.
I'm not too excited that I don't have AC, but but other than that, I'm pretty happy about it.
For many, a long time coming, but the upcoming heat wave is now triggering heat warnings starting on Vancouver Island. Plus, struggling to rebuild.
If you don't make it easy to follow the rules and you don't make it sensible to follow the rules will not be followed.
Frustrations from those who lost homes to a wildfire near Lillooet last summer, some waiting months to even be allowed to clear debris. Also, Vancouver's iconic views no more.
What do you think? Do you think that it should leave that view open, or do you think they should add more housing where those cranes are to block the view a little bit?
Definitely open.
The city plans to remove some of the decades-old view corridor protections in the name of housing development.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. Well, yes, the heat is on. Temperatures are ramping up province-wide as we head into the weekend. Let's go live to Michelle Morton, who's at Spanish Banks, finding out just how people are gearing up for this impending heat wave. Michelle.
Tanya, it's July, but it hasn't been feeling like summer up until now. Now with these hot temperatures in the forecast, possibly hitting heat wave levels. Earlier today, I spoke with people at the beach and at the park to hear what they think.
Loving it. I'm going to take my little boogie board out, be out in the water.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not too excited that I don't have AC, but but other than that, I'm pretty happy about it.
Yeah, most of the time when I'm sitting down by the beach, for sure. Not when I'm working, but you know.
Oh, really? How does it feel to work in the heat?
Uncomfortable, but you know, that's summer.
Right. What do you do if you don't mind me asking?
I'm a chef.
Yeah, it'll be wonderful. Finally, hey? You know, we expected it probably, like 2 weeks ago, but it's finally here.
Definitely getting a little bit worried and hearing rumors about drought and not wanting to use my hose as much as the summers in the past. We'll have a pool and fill the pool, and then that's maybe all you get for the day.
Right now it's lovely. Let's hope it's nice when it goes up and down, just so I just fingers crossed, no heat dome.
So, Michelle, Environment Canada has issued a special weather statement for Metro Vancouver and the Fraser Valley, and that's in addition to heat warnings also in effect now for parts of Vancouver Island.
That's right. So heat warnings are in effect from around Campbell River down to Duncan, so the east coast of Vancouver Island. And meteorologists say that the heat wave is going to start from the west and move east, and so that means likely there will be more for the interior.
So right now, heat warning criteria is being met closer to like Friday and Saturday for the coastal regions. And then as we shift into like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, that's when we're really going to start to reach our heat warning criteria for the interior.
Now, with that said, Tanya, the province is urging people in the areas where there are heat warnings in place to take extra precautions, including knowing the signs of heat-related illnesses, to drink additional water, and also to wear sunscreen and protective clothing.
All right, thank you. That's our Michelle Morton live at Spanish Banks tonight. Let's go back to the island, and those who run a cooling center in Nanaimo are calling on the city for more money to operate as they prepare to open voluntarily to support vulnerable people.
It's concerning. We still do not have a MHO, a Chief Medical Health Officer for our community, who can advocate on our best interests and for our most vulnerable populations. But it certainly, I think, is going to once again take a community grassroots effort to ensure that, you know, we don't lose that many lives and not many people are impacted by this extreme heat coming.
They say they're currently relying on community donations to keep their doors open. Nanaimo's mayor, however, says the province is in charge of funding.
Obviously, the province is the main leader when it comes to these kinds of things. Risebridge and other organizations, Salvation Army, who have funding from various provincial and other sources, are expected to provide these services. That's pretty standard.
Mayor Krogh says the city does have a misting center at Maffei-Sutton Park from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. And the lobbies of recreation centers will open, as well as city staff handing out water bottles to people on the street. With this heat ramping up, there's also a reminder for pet owners: do not leave animals in hot vehicles. The BC SPCA warns that leaving a pet in a hot car can have life-threatening consequences, not only for the animal, but can also lead to significant penalties for the owner.
I want to remind people that it is an offence to permit an animal to be in distress under the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. And the maximum penalty is a $75,000 fine and or up to 2 years imprisonment and or a prohibition from owning animals.
She adds breaking a car window to rescue an animal locked inside is both illegal and dangerous. Instead, the advice is to call police or a local animal shelter for help. And let's go live to our Darius Madavi, also at the beach. I feel like I'm getting shortchanged on this assignment. Everyone gets to be outside, but looks like a lot of people behind you as well enjoying this first real taste of summer, Darius.
Yes, that's right. And I think this is probably the first time I've been sent out in nice weather, and I like it. I think we should make it a regular thing. Yes, many people out here enjoying the sunshine, and the sunshine is only ramping up from here. Temperatures climbing pretty much across the province, and not looking to come down anytime soon. What we are sure of is that they're going to continue to climb into early next week. What we're not sure of is when exactly the heat wave is going to end. Easily into mid next week, it looks like, at least here on the coast. And that does have implications, not just for those of us enjoying the beach, but also for fire danger. I just need to bring the mood down a little bit. Take a look at this. You can see already our fire danger has climbed up considerably from where we had it recently, where the province has been mostly green, to now mostly yellows and oranges, unfortunately. If we continue to see this continue, if we see this weather continue, which we will, we're going to continue to see that fire danger climb. And the reason we're going to continue to see this weather is what we're having, this ridge of high pressure sitting over the province, continuing to just allow us to bake, pushing all that hot air back down, and then we get in this vicious cycle. So there's a proper heat dome over California that's continuing to build in. We're getting sort of the north end of that, so a little bit of a minor heat dome effect, but nothing like what the term usually evokes here from a few years ago. And if we zoom in on the province, you can see plenty of excessive heat warnings blanketing the coast. I'd expect that in the days ahead we may see those spread to the interior. Certainly our highs will meet the criteria for a heat warning, but what remains in question is whether our lows will, because you need both a really high and a high low in order to qualify for those heat warnings. But here, as you mentioned, or as Michelle mentioned, in Metro Vancouver, we do have a special weather statement as well, because we are watching out for those possible heat warnings in the days ahead. And regardless of whether the heat warnings are in effect, be aware of some possible some very likely hot weather with those highs reaching into the 30s.
All right, we know you'll be keeping an eye on it, and we'll chat with you a little later in the show. Thanks, Darius. Well, you might remember this incredible yet frightening scene from August of last year. A rare fire tornado caught on video near Lillooet as crews fought flames. The downtown lake wildfire sparked that tornado, and though the flames were eventually extinguished, they did spark ongoing problems for homeowners who are still trying to rebuild. Well, now many locals say red tape is fueling problems in the aftermath of that fire 1 year later. As Liam Britton is finding out, some are having to wait months on end just to be given the all clear to clean up debris on their property.
Charles Evans' family made lots of memories at their cabin on Gun Lake until last summer. It became one of 56 properties completely or partially destroyed by wildfire, but they were optimistic about next steps. At first,
we have insurance. We'll rebuild. We'll do the best we can. We'll figure it out. This, it can't be that hard.
But he says, in fact, it has been that hard, and he blames government red tape. Evans and others familiar with Gun Lake, which is a largely recreational community of cabins that are sometimes 70 years old or more, say a number of destroyed property owners are dealing with issues like underinsurance, no insurance at all, a vastly changed building code, and what they say are confusing or contradictory government directions about how and where they can rebuild or even just clean up. Evans says he even had to wait 8 months just for permission to clear debris.
And the frustration, both personal but also at a community level, is if you don't make it easy to follow the rules and you don't make it sensible to follow the rules will not be followed.
Local officials say they're trying to help, but many homes can't be rebuilt as they once were. Many were too close to the lake, for one thing.
Those kinds of impacts have certainly changed what people would like to rebuild. Rebuilding exactly what they had isn't always possible, and our staff are sensitive to that, and they understand how challenging this can be.
BC's emergency ministry says it's trying to help too, with cash to the district, quicker permits, and updated guidance to clear debris. Some home builders say this has become a bigger problem as we see more wildfires. Megan Thompson with Linwood Homes has helped many clients replace old homes with modern, up-to-code ones after a fire. But some are surprised by today's strict regulations.
Many people had very simple structures, no insulation, no proper heat source, no cooling source. You now cannot build a new home without a cooling source. Those are costly measures.
The province says having insurance can speed up rebuilding. As for Evans, his family was insured, but not fully. He expects to spend about $500,000 rebuilding on top of the payout. Better, he says, than holding on to a burned-out, empty piece of land. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, turns out it was 2 international students from India who were killed last week when a car going the wrong way on Highway 1 through West Vancouver crashed into them. This was the aftermath of that crash. Police say the 2 victims were 20 and 21 years old. 2 other students in that same car were also seriously injured. Investigators say the driver of the vehicle that was going the wrong way was a 26-year-old woman, also a foreign national. An investigation into a crash 2 years ago that killed 2 Metro Vancouver teenagers has cleared police of any wrongdoing. The crash happened in 2022 in Burnaby. The Independent Investigations Office says a transit police officer in an unmarked cruiser was going 124 kilometers an hour in a 50 zone while attempting a traffic stop along the border with New Westminster. The suspect vehicle wound up crashing into another car, killing the 2 teen boys inside. Well, now the police watchdog has ruled the officer's actions were reasonable and lawful. Well, to the northern coast of Vancouver Island and an update on the orphaned orca calf that was trapped in a remote lagoon for several weeks this past March after her mother died. Whale research group Bacetology says Quisaheus, or Brave Little Hunter, was guided to open water at the end of April following several rescue attempts. Since then, she was filmed alone near the entrance to Esperanza Inlet, where she was last seen 3 times in April and May. Well, later in May, at the end of the month, several groups of killer whales were documented around the inlet. Bacetology says they've received no further sightings of lone killer whales around the inlet or the west coast of Vancouver Island. And considering Brave Little Hunter's relatively good health, they don't believe she's died. So researchers say it's possible and even likely she's joined another group or moved on.
I mean, sometimes some animals are not seen for 2 or 3 years, and then they magically show up again. So in this case, because she's so young, it may not fall into that scenario, but I'm sure that she will not be crossed off the list for at least a year.
Well, back to Vancouver, and idyllic views from the city are set to change. City staff have come up with a plan to amend and even remove some of the so-called view cone protections that were put in place more than 30 years ago. As Chad Pawson reports, it's because of a demand from City Council to spur more housing development.
Here in Vancouver's False Creek, one of the city's most iconic views, the cityscape in the foreground, framed by the majestic North Shore Mountains in the background. This is one of Vancouver's protected views, a so-called view cone, but policies managing those views are set to change. City councillors say it's time for a modernization so that view cones don't limit desperately needed housing development.
This is really about balancing the need to protect and enhance the beautiful views and vistas in Vancouver, and this policy will do that. But it's also about unlocking housing opportunities on key sites, particularly on the Broadway corridor.
Currently, there are 38 public views in Vancouver, which can be viewed from 18 different places. City staff recommend removing 14 viewpoints, amending another 11, which would reduce the view origin points by 2 to 16. For example, the city proposes to change views like this on Main Street to a more narrow view from a different vantage. It's the same type of change for the mountain views from Granville Street. Here's a third example of how mountain views will be preserved from Olympic Village or the Cambie Street Bridge, but allow more development to reach up to those views. There has been significant pushback to the idea, most notably from a group called Save Our Skyline YVR. They're worried the changes are too severe and become guidelines rather than restrictions that were enshrined in 1989.
At the end of the day, people have said these views are important to us because they're priceless.
Other Vancouver residents are split, though, between having unobstructed views of the region's natural beauty and ensuring there is appropriate, affordable housing for all.
What do you think? Do you think that it should leave that view open, or do you think they should add more housing where those cranes are to block the view a little bit?
Definitely open. You have to, you have to approach the mountains view. It's incredible.
You gotta allow housing for people. You gotta, I mean, the city just keeps growing and growing. You gotta have housing for people.
Especially if they don't go too high.
It's just hard to see, right, that we are losing that many of those trees and those beautiful views for those housing.
I mean, you just look, there's a huge hole right there that you could house 20,000 people in. So is density the solution? I don't know, but people need to be able to live downtown, and people who live downtown need to be able to go to school and work downtown. And if there's not enough housing, then I guess we have to make some.
City staff says its recommendations strike a pragmatic balance between building housing, job space, and hotel rooms, meanwhile ensuring Vancouver remains livable, equitable, and vibrant. The policy changes go to City Council for approval next Wednesday, July 10th. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, we know the BC government is pushing municipalities to do more to build housing, but some mayors insist that setting targets for them is not the best way to serve their residents. New Westminster's mayor is one of them. Patrick Johnstone says the province is not providing enough money for affordable housing projects.
What actually we need is the tools to actually provide the infrastructure that we require. And I include affordable housing as infrastructure. Affordable housing is a common good. It is something that needs to be funded at the government level, and it's required to make our communities livable.
He says New West has been successful at building market housing, but the challenge lies with building affordable housing. Yet another prominent cabinet minister in the BC NDP government will not run again in the next provincial election. Rob Fleming, longtime MLA for Victoria Swan Lake, has announced he will not seek re-election this fall. He joins Harry Baines and Bruce Ralston, who both say they're not running as well this week. Fleming has been at the forefront of provincial politics for 2 decades now. In a statement, he thanked current Premier David Eby and former Premier John Horgan for their confidence and leadership. He didn't give a specific reason for his decision to step aside from politics. Christina Winter is the Green candidate for his riding in the upcoming election. BC United and BC Conservatives have not yet named candidates for the riding. The Surrey Board of Trade's very familiar face and longtime CEO and president, Anita Hubman, says she is stepping down in August after 18 years at the helm. She reflected on her time in the role this morning on the Early Edition.
When I first started 18 years ago as president and CEO, we really had no brand profile. And so I had to quickly revitalize our service portfolio and really ensure that we met with stakeholders, politicians.
Hubman is the longest serving president and CEO of the Surrey Board of Trade. She's been with the organization since 1993, the same year Surrey was incorporated as a city. Now, there have been rumors she'll be running for office, but when asked directly about that on the show this morning, she said she had no such plans. The Water Street pedestrian zone is officially now open until August. This is in Gastown. Vancouverites can look forward to a car light and car free through the area this summer.
Water Street will be the place to be in the city. There's nothing quite like it. Look, we have a lot of different neighborhoods that are awesome. But there's something iconic about Gastown.
Mayor Ken Sims says they are partnering closely with the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations to advance reconciliation through this project. The zone will also include storytelling boards and artwork by local Indigenous artists, as well as expanded patios, live performances, and special events. Let's take you to the UK now, where polls have closed in today's general election as British voters choose their new government. An exit poll released before any votes were counted suggests a landslide for the Labour Party. And joining us live now with the latest from London is the CBC's very own Chris Brown. Chris, thanks for making the time for us tonight.
Hi, Tanya. Well, there is a poll out. It's an exit poll. It was released just seconds after all of the votes were counted. It's being projected up in the BBC building behind me there. 410 seats are projected tonight for the Labour Party, just 130 for the Conservatives, which would amount to a repudiation, a significant repudiation of Tory rule.
All the pointers tonight are that Sir Keir Starmer is taking Labour back to power.
This is shaping up not just as a win for Labour, but a rout.
The thing that kept coming back to us was that the 14 years the Tories have been in power and the chaos that they've had to tolerate is that they wanted that change.
Starmer, are you ready to become Prime Minister?
Starmer, a former human rights lawyer who later was knighted Sir Keir for heading up Britain's Crown Prosecution Service, found success by moving the Labour Party to the political centre.
A mandate for economic growth.
He ditched extreme policies such as nationalising energy companies and instead promised an infusion of money into healthcare and education. Rishi Sunak was the 5th Prime Minister in 8 years for the scandal-ridden Conservatives.
And we will have a general election.
He called the election early, perhaps hoping to ride a rebounding UK economy, but his campaign was plagued by missteps, including bailing early on the D-Day anniversary commemorations.
On reflection, it was a mistake not to stay longer, and I've apologised for that.
A really serious press conference holding an ice cream.
Sunak also faced a surging threat from the political right, from Nigel Farage and Reform UK, which pushed an anti-immigrant, low-tax platform that ate into Conservative support.
I think the Conservatives need a little bit of time in the wilderness to sort themselves out.
Indeed, after Boris Johnson's many integrity lapses, a budget from Liz Truss that was blamed for crashing the pound and taking Britain out of the EU with few economic benefits to show for it, political veterans didn't seem surprised by what they were seeing.
I think it would have required sort of Superman as leader of the Conservative Party to lead them back to some sort of victory, and Mr. Sunak is not Superman.
Now, Chris, the vote counting will continue well into tomorrow, but if these exit poll results hold, what can we expect next?
Well, it does take a long time, Tanya, much longer than what we're used to in Canada, to count the votes and then announce the candidates. But we know that a number of very senior Conservative cabinet ministers, the Chancellor, the government House Leader, they're all in significant dogfights to try to hold on to their seats. So that's one thing to look for. Also, just how much of a breakthrough will Reform UK have? This is a party that's actually modeled after Canada's old Reform Party. They're hoping to do a reverse takeover if they get a significant size of the vote and eventually, hopefully, rival the Conservatives on the right. The transition for the new government will happen tomorrow morning. That's when Rishi Sunak, followed by Keir Starmer, will go and visit King Charles. And then Starmer will return alone to 10 Downing Street, and the Labour era will begin. Tanya.
Well, thank you so much for this. Appreciate your time, especially at this late hour for you. That's our Chris Brown, live from London following the UK election results. Well, straight ahead, we take a deep dive to learn more about the resurgence of one particular marine mammal. It's a huge one in BC's coastal waters. That's next. Stay with us. It is Throwback Thursday, which means it's time to dive deep into CBC's vast archives. We go back to the 1980s when a local musician founded an environmental organization to protest the pulp mills that were dumping dioxin in BC's coastal waters. In this story from June 1989, Terry Jacks leads a flotilla against 2 pulp mills in the Howe Sound. Take a look.
Security, security, security. This is Seasons in the Scum. At approximately 1100 hours this morning, we will be heading a large flotilla of boats north from Boyer Island to the pulp mill at Woodfibre and then across to the pulp mill at Port Mellon.
Terry Jack's passion against pollution leads this makeshift protest navy into Howe Sound today. They form a flotilla of more than 150 vessels and 1 airplane. Their mission is to deliver a message to Howe Sound's 2 pulp mills. Stop dumping dioxin and other toxic chemicals.
Now, if this was black, sticky oil, something people could see, it would be shut down immediately, but it's not. You can't see it, but it's much more deadly, and it's insidious. And we're protesting this. We want these mills shut down and the workers compensated. They have the technology available. They have lots of money right now, so we have to do something right away, now.
Everyone has come for the same reason.
I think it's for a good cause. It affects my business. I want to do something about it. You're a crab fisherman? That's right.
Same thing, we're crab fishermen. It affects our livelihood. If they close it down for pollution, what are we going to do? You know, all our money's invested in this industry.
Finally, after more than 2 hours in the water, the flotilla approaches its first target, the Western Forest Products Mill at Woodfibre.
Where's the boss? We got a present for him. Okay, everybody, we're gonna have to get out of here. We're gonna drop the present and leave. Okay. Hey!
Woodfibre officials watch the whole thing carefully. They say they're spending millions to modernize the plant so it won't use dioxins. After this stop, it's on to the mill at Port Mellon. The protest has caused a stir, but will it be enough to change anything?
Realistically, I think it'll take more than 100 boats, 200 boats out in the water one day to get the ball rolling. But the ball's got to start being pushed somewhere. And today's the first push, I think.
Well, those days of pollution and protests in Howe Sound are a long way off now. Never mind the long-term effect of the Britannia mine that leached pollutions into the fjord. Since the 1980s and the eventual closure of Woodfibre, Howe Sound has seen a remarkable turnaround with regards to wildlife. Salmon stocks have rebounded, rare glass sponge reefs have been protected, and another sign of that new abundance of wildlife, one of nature's largest creatures, humpback whales. Once rare, they've now routinely been seen. And joining me now is Andrew Treitz, a professor at UBC and the director of the Marine Mammal Research Unit. Andrew, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
So take us through why we are seeing this resurgence of humpback whales in Howe Sound. What factors led to their return?
Well, the biggest thing that's happened is they've been protected. They were hunted mercilessly throughout the North Pacific, and including the Salish Sea. In fact, it only took 3 years to kill every last whale that lived in the Salish Sea. Between 1907 and 1910, in 3 years, they removed about 250, and it took them 100 years to find their way back here.
We've, fast forwarding to today, we've recently seen a slew of videos of close-up encounters with whales and humans. Is that okay? Should they be happening at all?
It's happening in part because it's new, and people are still trying to figure out where they are, how to act in and around them. You have to keep in mind that in the past 20 years, when the first one found its way back here, the numbers have grown. We now have somewhere between about 250 to 300, and they're going to some of the places that they used to use historically, but which most people have forgotten. For example, around Bowen Island is a spot where probably BC's very first whale watching company started around 1900. And they brought passengers from Vancouver on a steamship out to Bowen Island to look at humpback whales. And this has become a spot that the whales have rediscovered. And again, it's one of the spots where people are running into them and seeing them feeding.
Now let's shift gears a bit. Wood fiber is now being reborn, this time as an LNG export facility. What kind of potential risk does this restart of an industry pose to the reborn wildlife in that area?
Well, the whales are here to feed on either krill shrimp or small fish like anchovies or herring. So that's why they're here. And as long as the companies or pollution doesn't affect their prey source, they should just be fine.
So the upshot of this, are you generally positive with the outlook of this population, or are there some serious risks we need to keep in mind moving forward?
In terms of the recovery of humpback whales, it's one of the success stories. They were hunted down in the North Pacific to only about 2,000 whales around 1970. The numbers have grown, and currently there's about 27,000. So they have recovered. They're back to historic numbers. In terms of the ones that we're getting to know by name, because they're now coming back here, and some of the moms are bringing their calves back here as well, we're getting to know them, and we're going to want to pay particular attention at caring for them. They are at risk of being hit by large ships. They're at risk of getting entangled, such as in lines and buoys attached to crab pots, for example, or into fishing nets. And I think the onus is going to be on all of us to figure out, now that they're back, where do they occur, what areas do they need, and how can we accommodate their needs?
Some good precautions there, but also nice to hear some reason for optimism. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Andrew Trites is a UBC professor and the director of the Marine Mammal Research Unit. Still to come, immigration lawyers in Quebec take the province to court over delays with reuniting families. That's after the break. Welcome back. Let's head north to the Yukon, where cyanide has been detected in the water near that landslide at a gold mine that happened last week. And as Lindsay Duncombe tells us, the news has a First Nations community now demanding action.
Right there is where the failure happened. And
this is the first time Chief Donna Hope has seen the damage at the Eagle Gold Mine. So troubling, she has a big demand of the Yukon government.
Today we asked for a pause on all mining activity in our traditional territory.
She's especially worried about water. The mine used a cyanide solution to extract gold from ore. And now, the territory says water testing shows elevated levels of cyanide at the mine and at a creek nearby.
This level of cyanide in Haggart Creek could potentially affect fish. Whether this concentration of cyanide in the water will actually affect fish depends on other chemicals in the water.
The government found 0.04 milligrams per liter of cyanide in that sample, exceeding the licensed limit of 0.005 milligrams per liter.
That's certainly in the range where, like, there's a 1982 study out of Concordia that shows that rainbow trout exposed at that levels, we expect half of them to die.
The territory says drinking water samples are safe, but people shouldn't use nearby waterways for recreation.
It doesn't help the community, and it also doesn't help the reputation of the industry.
The mine is owned by Victoria Gold. Just hours before the territory's announcement, it contradicted the government findings, saying corporate testing has not detected any cyanide. It also didn't mention the risk of further slides, something government engineers say is a real danger.
Everybody is very alive to that risk. The company's very alive to that risk.
Watching the briefing, Chief Hope was disappointed.
I just fear that they're not taking this as seriously as we really need to be.
When it comes for the call to halt mining, the minister said the government heard the request and will consider it. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
Immigration lawyers in Quebec are taking that province to court. And as Alison Northcott explains, they're upset with government policies that have led to lengthy delays in family reunifications.
Newly married couple.
Joanna Rutkowski is eager to build a life with her husband in Quebec, but she's discouraged by delays in the immigration process for family reunification, which would allow him to move here from Morocco.
We feel so betrayed. I feel so betrayed by the Canadian and the Quebec government.
Family reunification is controlled by the federal government, but people immigrating to Quebec also need approval from the province, which limits the number of people it accepts each year. Last month, Quebec revealed plans to scale back even more and cut the number of applications it will process almost in half.
So you have spouse living inside or spouse living outside.
This immigration lawyer says the wait time in Quebec is already much longer than it is for those seeking to sponsor a spouse in other provinces. The wait outside Quebec is around 10 months. In Quebec, it can take up to 32 months. Quebec's Immigration Lawyers Association is taking the issue to court.
We consider that Quebec has no right to limit the number of applicants that they can accept. What we were hoping for and what we're still hoping for is for the two levels of governments to discuss, to have a conversation about this and to deal with the issue and to stop the suffering of families.
La partie réunification familiale doit être limitée.
Premier François Legault says the number of immigrants needs to be limited to ensure the province can meet the needs of all newcomers.
It's almost 2 years from now that we have applied.
Lauriane Lachapelle has been trying to help her husband immigrate from Guatemala.
Right now, families will be stuck in the middle and will have more wait, more insecurities, more anxiety.
Rutkowski is tired of waiting, so she's moving to Poland, where she also has citizenship. Her husband will join her there.
Well, if we're not wanted in Canada, let's go somewhere else.
The federal government says admissions are limited to the number of spaces set by Quebec, but it says it is working to speed up processing for Quebec applicants. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Applications for U.S. visas are facing a major backlog, and that's causing issues for thousands in Canada who need those documents to travel south. As Shayna Luck reports, some travelers are now risking scams and paying hundreds of dollars.
So I check it every day and every time.
Nathan Chen is trying to get an appointment at a U.S. consulate. He's an international student and wants to visit the States, but he needs a visa. Many people are waiting up to 2 years for an appointment. The earliest Chen could find is in 2025.
So you're planning to pay one of these ads today?
Yeah, I want to try it.
The wait times have generated an online industry that claims to help people jump the queue. It's easy to find online advertisers promising to get people faster appointments. That was tempting for Chen.
I want to know what was happened and what it will be if I pay that service.
He invited CBC News to watch the transaction, which cost more than he was expecting at $300 Canadian.
Oh my God.
Once Chen paid the money, he had to hand over his U.S. account information, allowing a third party to rebook him if earlier appointments become available. This is an issue around the world, according to researchers in Germany who've labeled it scalping.
Everywhere, whenever you have a big overdemand for these public services, scalpers find a way to kind of generate profits for it.
But in the past year, the U.S. State Department has heard from people in Canada who did what Chen did and lost their money and their accounts.
That's when we typically hear about it, when the applicant realizes that they no longer have access to their account, that the scammer has changed the password, and so then they're stuck.
When we asked, the advertiser said they've rebooked a few thousand appointments in Canada this year, but they wouldn't reveal more details. Chen found an earlier appointment himself with the help of a friend. And after complaining to the website that hosted the ad, he got his money back. Shayna Luck, CBC News, Halifax.
Coming up, we continue to track Hurricane Beryl. After pummeling Jamaica and parts of the Caribbean, it's now headed for Mexico. We'll have the very latest after the break. Welcome back. Let's bring you the latest on Hurricane Beryl. It's now churning across the Caribbean toward Mexico as a Category 3 storm. At least 10 people have died as it leaves a path of devastation in its wake. International climate correspondent Susan Ormiston looks at how Mexico's beachside destinations are now bracing for that hurricane.
Boarding up for Beryl in the Yucatan Peninsula. Lineups for gas and a run on canned goods and non-perishable groceries. The hurricane has weakened, but Mexico's popular southern resort areas are still exposed, with forecasts for heavy rain and high water overnight and landfall expected early Friday morning.
The waters are going to start to rise ahead of the landfall because Beryl has generated this very large wave field that's racing out ahead of the hurricane, and those large breaking waves are going to start to reach the coast.
Warnings for Cancun, Playa del Carmen, Cozumel. Airports packed. Already flights canceled.
We're just stranded here. We're trying to see if we find tickets. If not, we'll have to book a hotel. I heard the airport is going to shut down.
Beryl came early and fierce, battering Caribbean islands, including St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
It was a scary experience. Houses, concrete houses just fall to the ground. It was like something just out of the world.
A window into the aftermath shows widespread damage to over 90% of the buildings on 2 islands in Grenada, according to the Prime Minister. In Jamaica, cleaning up after Beryl took a sideswipe at the island. Flooding and power knocked out.
I think most Jamaicans are giving thanks.
But Beryl skirted the capital, passing 70 kilometers south. Most of the airports will reopen Friday. The Prime Minister says the country has worked hard to fortify its infrastructure.
We're building our roads to higher standards, putting in larger drains and culverts. Essentially, we are trying to develop our country from an infrastructure, financial, and national security perspective to be climate-proof.
Beryl has delivered a message. This season, expect more intense storms.
And with that, let's bring back our Darius Madavian. Darius, as far as hurricanes go, we know this one has been a standout in the worst of ways. And I know you continue to track this hurricane as well.
Yes, so we're now back down to a Category 2 hurricane, so a bit of improvement from the major hurricane we saw earlier when it made landfall in Grenada, but still could be devastating. Wind speeds well over 160 kilometers per hour. Just take a look here. You can see where exactly the hurricane has been and where it's going. If you see here, again, like I mentioned, back down to a Category 2 hurricane, but continuing to progress. You can see those hurricane warnings in place on the coast of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. It's expected to make landfall overnight tonight and then continue to make its way overland, and by the time it gets back onto the Gulf on the other side, it should have lost most of its strength, come down to a tropical storm. But as it passes over those warm waters once again, it could pick up enough steam to become a Category 1 hurricane once again before making landfall again in either northern Mexico or southern Texas. Right now that's up in the air. But if you see here, quite the storm moving over the region as it continues to move over those warm waters, just picking up more and more energy. And unfortunately this time around, whereas usually a hurricane that passes when a major hurricane passes over, it brings up those cooler waters from down below because the ocean is just so hot right now. Even in those deeper layers, it's not having that upwelling of colder waters. It's warm even down there, which means that we're not going to see that suppressive effect we usually do where it prevents future hurricanes from forming in the wake of it, where temperatures in the ocean drop 4 to 5 degrees. And again, this is only the very beginning of the hurricane season. You can see here, this is where we are today. Still a long way to go before the peak that usually happens in around mid-September. Now, quite a different story where we are here in BC. Here we have nothing but clear skies. Temperatures continuing to climb into early next week at the earliest before they start to come back down. If you see here, we're going to continue to see these really high highs over the next few days, but our lows will be low enough that we shouldn't have too much difficulty. Nothing like the heat dome that we're familiar with, or that most people think of when we hear the term. So again, a little bit of good news there, but no precipitation on the way as we continue to see temperatures climb, easily hitting 40 degrees in some places by early next week. Be ready for that. And in terms of the conditions tomorrow, nothing but sunny skies. That's a really easy forecast. Here in Vancouver, though, sunny skies for the next 5 days, and as far as we can see beyond that as well. And again, expect to see temperatures well above seasonal and some heat warnings probably coming to effect in the days ahead.
All right, we'll continue to keep an eye on those heat warnings. Thank you so much, Darius. It's our Darius Madavi live from Sunset Beach. To medical news now, the growing use of medications known as GLP-1 drugs has the food industry taking notice. The drugs, prescribed to help control diabetes, can also help control obesity and have become popular with weight loss aids. As CBC's Nisha Patel is finding out, that means millions of people are not buying as much snack food as they used to.
Medium cappuccino with skim milk, please.
Since she started taking Ozempic, Reagan Sather has lost her taste for treats.
My desire for food completely changed, and it also impacted how much I could eat.
That smaller appetite has changed how she shops for groceries.
Really focusing on fresh meat, fresh produce. It completely eliminated any snacking.
Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro are used to manage diabetes and obesity. In Canada, more than 1 million patients are taking these drugs. In the U.S., it may be as many as 15 million.
This is resulting in a overall decrease in food consumption, which is a change in terms of some of the diets that have come in the past.
Walmart says it's already seeing people who use weight loss drugs spend less on groceries.
If shoppers buy fewer salty snacks and sugary drinks, that could slim down profits. So big food companies are paying close attention and trying to adapt.
Coca-Cola is doubling down on high-protein milk and sparkling waters. Danone will boost investment in yogurts and nutritional drinks. Nestle plans to launch a line of portion-controlled frozen food. Dietitian Abby Langer says patients do need to watch what they eat.
What ends up happening often is that you miss out on nutrients that are really important, like protein and fiber.
But while new packaged options may be fast and convenient,
I think there's going to be a lot of criticism of those Ozempic ready meals, just because people are going to be saying, well, ultra-processed food got a lot of people where they're at now.
For people taking weight loss drugs,
it's still just a tool, and you still have to make the right decisions in order for it to work properly.
What they choose to put in their shopping cart has likely changed for good. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, we find out your favorite outdoor spot to swim. We hit the beaches ahead of the heat wave that's moving in. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
CBC returns as a media partner of the Surrey Fusion Festival, July 20th to the 21st. The festival features over 50 cultural pavilions that will incorporate the theme of landmarks of the world into their displays. For more information, visit surreyfusionfestival.ca. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter and keep connected with us.
This weekend's warm weather will be a great time to take a dip, so we hit the streets to find out where your favorite spot is for a summer swim.
I would say if I were to choose Deep Cove, well, be the best. Yeah, I would mean maybe go to Third Beach.
We're from Vancouver Island, Nanaimo River is the best spot. It's amazing.
Sioux Potholes is good. I haven't been there in years, but it's good. Tofino, Ucluelet, yes. Well, I do. I have a few, but I really just don't want to share because I find when people start like blasting it everywhere, it ruins the spot.
In my indoor pool with air conditioning.
Definitely the pool in our building because this water is nasty.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. Have a great night.